Good morning and welcome to AM Agenda. I'm Ashley Gillen. Well, nearly 100 people have been killed and hundreds more have been wounded in Iraq overnight in the deadliest attacks the country has seen in almost 2 years. Overnight, a wave of bombings targeted government buildings, causing havoc. The White House has condemned the blasts, which come just 6 weeks after the withdrawal of US troops from urban areas of the country. Joining me this morning to look at this issue and the other political issues of the day, the Housing Minister Tanya. Good morning.
Ashley.
And the Shadow Finance Minister Helen Coonan. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Ashley.
Tanya, starting with you, did Australia and indeed the US pull out of Iraq too early, do you think?
Well, Ashley, I think certainly at the time that Australia entered the Iraq war, there were many criticisms of that decision, and the way the Iraq war was prosecuted, I think, leaves a lot to be desired. But I think at this stage now we're beyond some of those discussions and really have to focus on how we can help the people of Iraq rebuild, the sort of supports we can give them to make sure that they have the everyday security that ordinary civilians in Iraq deserve, that they can have free and fair elections, that their economy can be restored to operating normally. And I think that our discussions from now on really have to focus on the future for Iraq rather than the past.
Helen Coonan, what's your take on this? Was it a mistake to leave?
Look, I think on any view, we have always said that we had to be in there for the long haul. Now decisions have been taken about how withdrawal has been handled. We went in there with the United States. We supported the United States and the Iraqi people. Obviously, it's a tragedy if there's a deteriorating situation now, and I really do think we have to continue to focus on how we can support the people on the ground. It was very encouraging there for a while, but clearly there's been a major breakdown in security. Very concerning, I think, going forward.
Some in the coalition have suggested that if the Howard government did continue on in power, then Australia would have eventually withdrawn, as we've seen the Rudd government do. Do you think that would have been the case?
Well, look, it's very difficult to speculate, but our position had always been there that we should stay there till the job is done. When the job is done, of course, is a matter for evaluation at the time. So obviously, I can't really, speculate about what would have happened if we'd have stayed in government. But I do think it is fair to say that there had been some major gains in a country that had previously been in dreadful trouble with Saddam Hussein, and it had improved. I mean, there's no doubt that at the time these decisions were taken by the United States and supported by the Rudd government, there had obviously been assessments made that this was a warranted move. Now, we're not privy to that information, but our critical view about all of this was that you have to, if you go in, stay till the job is done.
Looking at Australia's relationship with another part of the world, of course, Australia's relations with China, it seems to have soured to the point where yesterday the state's mouthpiece, the China Daily, was lamenting in an editorial that sees an anti-China chorus coming from Canberra. It's calling for sanctions against some Australian products. The Foreign Minister, Stephen Smith, has been playing down today reports that Australia's ambassador to Beijing has been hauled back here for urgent talks. Tanya Plibersek, what can you tell us about this? Is the government getting very concerned about how things are deteriorating?
Well, certainly the ambassador travels back and forth between China and Australia all the time, as all our ambassadors do occasionally come back to Australia to have discussions with the Australian government. I think it's clear that while our trade relationship with China is strong, our long-term relationship is strong, that we have had some recent hiccups along the way. The Chinese government have been critical of us for allowing the Uyghur leader who came here to obtain an Australian visa. But the Australian government can't make decisions about visas based on whether we'll please or displease neighbouring countries. We have to follow Australian domestic law when we issue visas. There was no reason not to grant a visa, and I think that although that's obviously been a difficult decision for China to accept, that our long-term relationship is very strong, as has just been recently shown with the massive gas deal that we've done with China. I believe that the long-term future is good.
You don't think that since the Rudd government's taken power that diplomatic relations have worsened?
Oh, I think that we're going through a little bit of a rough patch at the moment, and I'm sure that these things happen time to time in bilateral relationships, but we have had a very long and close relationship with China. I believe we'll have a good, strong, close relationship with China in the future.
Well, the China Daily's editorials also accused Australia of siding with terrorists because of that decision to grant a visa to Rabia Kadir. Helen Coonan, do you agree with Malcolm Turnbull that Australia's relations with China have hit a 10-year low?
Well, it certainly deteriorated significantly under the Rudd Labor government. You've only really got to look at some of the major mishandlings that have happened since the Rudd government came to office. First of all, you had, for example, Mr Rudd lecturing the Chinese on human rights publicly, when, of course, there's a dialogue set up to actually do that in a structured fashion.
But he was applauded for that publicly.
Well, he was applauded by some people, but clearly that deeply offended the Chinese, because there is a dialogue, a track dialogue set up to discuss these kind of issues, and actually doing it in public and doing it in Mandarin obviously resonated with the Chinese government.
That's what Australians wanted Kevin Rudd to do.
Well, what I think we also need to look at is the longer term implications of that. And then you've got the failure to pick up the phone to do anything about Stern Hugh, and instead megaphone diplomacy. Here we are, a veiled threat to the Chinese that the world's watching, and then you've got another failure, another major failure in not working through with the Chinese on the issues relating to Rabia Kadir. And all of this obviously is cumulative, to such an extent that the Chinese Daily is now saying, why should China, I think the expression was, saddle its money bags to an unfriendly kangaroo. Well, the commercial relationship is clearly different, and we really do welcome the fact that commercial negotiations haven't been impeded in any way, because that's not to do with the government. That's not a government issue.
I want to get back to that, but we'll just let Tanya for a second.